How can we make sure that everyone has access to these platforms and that nobody is left behind? You've heard me say this once, and you'd hear me say it again. Cybersecurity is not just one person's task, it's everybody's responsibility. And we all play a role in this as a community. Welcome to the Power Hour at Cyber Exchange. Before we begin, I want to remind you to make sure that you've registered for our cybersecurity conference, Cyber Exchange Online Live Summit from August 10th to August 14th. You can register at cyberexchange.ca, and you can enjoy today's Power Hour both at the platform itself as well as being live streamed on LinkedIn, Facebook, and other social media. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome Shelley to the Power Hour. Shelley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shelley, they say that for every minute we spend not being productive, we've lost 60 seconds of building something new. That's the power of a minute. That's the power of an hour. So for this whole hour, I really want to spend powering through all of your various achievements in the world of cybersecurity, everything that you've done to make cybersecurity training more equitable and accessible, and leave our audience, which comprise of C-suite, comprise of students, comprise of a whole variety of individuals from public sector to private sector, leave them with some very powerful nuggets of information on how they too can partake in cybersecurity certifications and trainings with the SANS Institute. So Shelley, I'll jump right into it. How did you land in this spot of delivering cybersecurity trainings?
Well, that's an interesting story because an individual at SANS actually sought me out. I was very involved in business development with other companies that had nothing to do with cybersecurity. It was not part of my world. I am a communicator. I'm a people connector. I love to build businesses. I love to make things happen. And this individual at SANS came and said, "We need you." And I'm like, what would I ever do in your world? Because all I thought about was the techie stuff. And I'm like, that's just not me. I don't want to go there. After several conversations and looking at the website, I finally said, you know what? Jump on the ship, see where it takes you.
Yep.
And 7 years later, I'm still here. I'm still not the techie,
Right.
but I can make things happen in the cybersecurity world. And my role with SANS is to work with individuals, especially those, and I love working with those who are passionate about the industry, about cybersecurity, about keeping the bad guys out, about protecting their information, protecting their networks. And I work from the CISO right through to the business analyst to the HR people. I work with several parts of any one organization.
In keeping with the metaphor of jump onto the ship and see where it takes you, one of my favorite writers, Rabindranath Tagore, he says that you're not going to cross the sea by simply staring at it. You've got to take a plunge somewhere. So how did you begin? You entered into this role in SANS, a very limited background, if any, in cybersecurity. You had to do something in order to get familiar with the nomenclature of the space.
Well, you know what I did, because at SANS and in the cybersecurity world, things change really fast. We have always been a virtual work at home community workforce. So SANS in the past has done, several conferences, and that's typically where we would meet with our customers, meet with each other. And so I had to figure out, how am I going to learn this industry? And I thought the best way for me to learn this industry is to sit and listen to customers. And so that's what I did. I brought, and SANS products, some would say, wow, you're expensive. But I'm like, we get tens of thousands of people coming to our training every week, every day. And I'm like, I got to understand why they do that. What is this industry all about? So I sat down with them, and I would bring groups of people together, and I would allow for conversations. And through those conversations, I was able to learn the importance of networking, the importance of having the right people on the team. I was able to understand that some cybersecurity teams are also the maintenance team, the operations team for I was able to learn so much just by listening to those who are in the industry. Really nurturing my relationships with SANS instructors who have, phenomenal intel,
Sure.
have been involved in some, breaking news events around the world, and just listening and understanding their passion and what they were doing in their everyday world. So a lot of it was just listening and knowing that I needed to understand.
This is phenomenal because this is a thread that we've been seeing, across all of our power hours with various of our advisory champions, where they've reiterated this point that we need to listen to understand as opposed to listen to reply. And SANS as an institute, and I'm not quite sure if you cover a global territory, but I know that you've got a pretty important portfolio. SANS touches numerous communities. I mean, just if you allow me just for 30 seconds to sort of elaborate on this, if you look at our advisory champions on Cyber Exchange, we have folks from Melbourne, we have folks in, from Australia to India, to Pakistan, to Dubai, to Tanzania, to wherever else have you. We've got folks from across the world. For you, were you challenged with having to hear multiple perspectives and multiple experiences, or were you just focused specifically within the North American and Canadian market?
Most of my time was spent in the North American market, but many of the companies and organizations that we work with have people that work around the world.
Sure.
And so it's not uncommon to go to a SANS event, even today on our live online training, and be sitting in a classroom with people from all over the world.
Right.
So doing that, it allowed me to understand, why did you come here for training? You could have did this training at home. SANS, we have conferences at your house too. And they're like, it's interesting when you're in training to be amongst different audiences. So, typically if you go to Eastern US, you have more of a government-based audience. Typically, if you go to the West, you've got more of an enterprise audience. So people around the world, people from Canada would go to the US for training because they were sitting with other people with a different perspective on how they handled situations, how they hired people, how they trained people, and how their SOC worked. You would learn that from each other. So the value that I found and how do I understand this industry, I also found our students use that in their planning for their training.
Fantastic. I'll take off from the group that you identified in your last statement, which is students. I teach at Durham College and work there as well. And I still remember this at the Women in Cybersecurity conference in BC before Corona, or a day before the lockdown, quite literally. One of my students, when they saw you go on stage, said, "Hey, she's from the SANS Institute. Did you know that they are the Rolls Royce of cybersecurity certifications?" I said, "Sure." So can you tell our audience a little bit more about, I'm sure everybody is quite familiar with the SANS Institute, but from your perspective, what does the SANS Institute bring to the table, and what makes their certifications unique and sort of not a one-size-fits-all kind of delivery model? Shelley?
I think what I learned and what I love about the SANS world and the place that I work is that SANS also has provided, for as long as I've been there and probably prior, the practical side of training. So I believe it was Brian Krebs who had an article out just in the last week or so that said, you can have multiple certifications, but employers are looking for that practical side, that hands-on, can you do this task if I ask you to do it? Academically, you can tell me about it, but can you actually do it? So that's one of the things that I loved about SANS was they provided that practical experience to the students. And I've sat, like I said, with many students who said they've done a lot of training. And I wouldn't disc any training. I've done different training with different organizations myself. It's being at the right training at the right time and being open-minded to how does this fit for me? You will have employers that understand SANS training and know that if you have a certification from SANS, you've got some practical skills. There's still many people out there who don't know who SANS is. Sure. When I started with SANS as a Canadian, en français, SANS means without. And I'm like, you're going to work for somebody that means without? So there's a lot of organizations and companies that don't know who SANS is still today. But certifications and SANS certifications for those individuals and organizations that do know, and I can say there's probably not a company that doesn't spend money at SANS training their people. Yep. It's highly recognized. We also do workforce planning with companies because we don't want you just spending your money taking a SANS course. We want to make sure that you and your people are taking the right course at the right time. We don't ever want a customer in a class that says, oh my gosh, this is not the class I thought I was going to be in. This isn't even relevant to my job. We'll move you out and put you back where we think you should be, or allow you some time to think about what course is the right course for you. And so the working closely with the customer, the research that SANS organization does, the caliber of our instructors, in order to be a SANS instructor, they have to continue to work in the workforce every day. So they're not teaching for SANS every day. Most of them have full-time jobs or consulting roles that they're taking on, and they're actually working hands-on in the industry. I love SANS. I love what I do with SANS, and I love watching our customers grow up in SANS.
You know, just behind you, the little poster behind you says, "Stop over-analyzing." And I'm going to forewarn you and forearm you that this may be a moment of analysis paralysis, but I'm going to ask it nonetheless, because from my vantage point as a university and a college professor, it is important for me to go down this stream. In your perspective, what is the difference between the theoretical and the practical side of learning? And if we can follow up that with, what is the difference between going to a university or college to study cybersecurity versus getting into and I use this term very carefully, a quick and concise industry training experience?
Yes. So I have experience with customers. So you can imagine you go to an event and there's a bunch of graduates with degrees all attending a SANS training. And I'm just like, and the SANS training for the particular class that they were in was, over 7,000 US dollars that their company invested in them. And I'm like, wow, why are you guys here? I'm just known for asking the question directly. You just graduated from university, you got hired by this company, and now they're sending you to SANS. Their response was, I've learned so much here that I did not learn in university. That was the practical side. That was what happened today in security. We're talking about it. That's what they loved. When I went back to their employer and said, why are you sending all these people to SANS training that are new graduates? Their response is, we don't trust them on our networking system. We want to ensure that they have the practical skills to be on our networking system, that they've had some exposure, that they can do what they say they can do. And, there may be some people in the audience who, went through a job interview and said, yes, I know how to do that. And then they said, okay, could you just show us right here? And the person attempting to get the job had no understanding of what it was they had to do when there was a problem in front of them and work on the system. And so SANS provides that practical experience, that current experience. Our instructors are known to stay with students if they have more questions, because they love it. They're passionate about the industry. They're passionate about what's new. And it's not uncommon to be in a room with a SANS instructor and a bunch of students, and there's some 19-year-old in the class that says, hey, what about this? And everybody looks and I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody's heard about that. And so again, is everybody pounces on that, and we're learning in today's world what's happening. And I think that's, if you look in the industry, there are a lot of people who have no certifications,
Yep.
no degree in computers or engineering, and they've done very well in the industry. And so we have to keep that in mind. And, maybe it's a conversation about, education and where is education going in our society, knowing, I have young people in my life, their ability to be on computers and understand what's happening, I think some days probably outpaces their teachers at school.
I said this before.
And so we need to take a look at where are we getting that education and who's going to get the jobs and create the jobs of the future.
I said this before in a couple of other sessions where, as a professor, my job is not to teach you anything new. My job is really to get you to think. And I want our audience to now start thinking a little bit about the choices that we make in terms of validating ourselves in the world of cybersecurity. Now, I can almost hear a couple of my other faculty colleagues asking this question: how does SANS maintain a relationship with academic faculties?
Well, we work with a lot of them. A lot of them attend SANS training through our research. Virginia Tech CISO is one of our instructors, so we're very engaged um, with everyone. And it's part of SANS mission. A security breach has no face. It can be anybody, any company, anywhere, anytime. And so SANS is very good at I always say SANS, you might think that the Rolls Royce of training, it's great training and it comes with a price, but SANS does a lot of things that we do not charge people for.
Yep.
And that is a real key part in engaging with people. I think in anything in life, if you want to know something and you phone up if somebody were to call you and say, I'm thinking about doing what you do when I become an adult or career change, you'd be more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with them. If they said, I'm really stuck on this, what are your thoughts? Typically, as a society, we like to be helpful. We like to help people grow. And I think that's part of what SANS does every day.
One of the things when I've here in Durham region and the various municipalities that, courtesy of CyberX, that we get to, and I get to as the advisory lead, that I get to engage with, a lot of times when I've done talks in different communities, whether it's with seniors or with young kids or professionals who, a majority of them have not touched the world of cybersecurity, and I'm encouraging them to take their footsteps there. A lot of them get intimidated. And I always tell them that if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping in a room with a mosquito and you'll know exactly what I mean. Now, from a SANS perspective, somebody comes in and says, listen, I don't know anything about this space, but I'd like to get started. How can SANS take you on that journey of success?
Well, we have a lot of programs. We have a lot of free programs. So somebody who's looking at the industry, I invite them to, go to sans.org, look at the website, look at our free resources, look at the upcoming webcasts that we have at SANS, we've got a lot of free conferences coming up where people can access and meet people and learn. And then you got to find your spot. And part of that is, individuals taking the next step. I had an individual one time out of Minneapolis, and she wanted to get into security. Young woman, she said, I know I love security and I want to get into that world. And she was referred to me by somebody from Wells Fargo who said, call Shelley, she'll help you. At SANS, we have a facilitator moderator program where we allow people to apply to the program. And if they're chosen, they can go to attend a SANS course as a teacher's helper is the best way to say it. Mm-hmm. So for those who know the SANS audience, those are the people in the red aprons, and they're able to take their SANS course. They're able to get their on-demand and their certification for $2,500. And first they get to work alongside the instructor. And I've always been a believer. Nothing in the world comes free. You've got to be able, if you're going to be in security and you're going to be good, you've got to be passionate. You've got to be reading and learning every single day. We have the Ryerson Academy happening, the Catalyst right now in the Toronto, Brampton area. Yep. That's an amazing program. And we're allowing people to come in who have shown a passion to be in cybersecurity. And that is key for individuals getting into the industry. There are like DEF CON, there's the cyber exchange upcoming in August that people should be registering for so that they have a better understanding, so they can find someone in that audience, whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's one of the other speakers, to say, can we have a conversation? I want to talk about this. Can you help me? Can you direct me?
Fantastic. Now, Shelley, the aspect of the individual and some of the programs that you're running here in Canada, I'm going to come back to that in sort of the latter half. We have about 35 odd minutes. So I'm going to come back to that maybe in another 15 minutes. So park that thought. But I do want to go to the relationship between individualized, personal, and corporate training. What's it that the mystics say, right? Everybody seems to know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. And you're absolutely right. There is a cost to getting certified. There is a cost to learning from that experience, so on and so forth. Can you delve a little bit more into the aspect of this corporate training where corporations send a couple of their staffers or one staff member, and then there's the individual who wants to make a decision. What are the differences between the two, and how can SANS or someone like yourself help people or corporations with developing their own custom fit, custom desired plan of progress?
Okay, so that has become more common where the workplaces are looking for roadmaps to how do we build our cybersecurity team and what skills do we need do, and what skills do we have, because some organizations have had people that have worked there for 15, 20 years have had no formal training. And so where they're starting at now is let's do some assessments and let's confirm what they do know and maybe find any weak areas where we need to address. And so we have more companies looking at workforce planning in today's world. How do we ensure we have the right people at the right time in the right places, and how do we grow our workforce and grow their skill set? What does that look like? So SANS does have a roadmap, and we also work with individual corporations to look at their specific teams and what they're looking for.
Hmm.
And it's from teams that work together. Now everybody's virtual working. I was talking to somebody about a job the other day, and they said, well, do you know if they live in Ottawa? And I said, does it really matter anymore? And he said, I guess not, because people can live anywhere now and work for us because we're all working virtually, and they plan to work virtually for the unforeseeable future as well.
Yeah.
And so we see those changes. So that changes some of the opportunities for people that are looking for work. Like, you take COVID-19 and you say, what are the opportunities? The opportunities now are that you can apply for jobs almost anywhere because most organizations are working virtually. And so there's lots of conversations with corporations doing that. The other thing is for the individual who's looking at their own, what do I want to do? At SANS, we always say for our instructors, they can do a multitude of things, but we always say to them, teach what you're passionate about, because that's always where you'll go back to. If your go-to is chocolate, you're always going to go to chocolate, even though strawberries might be healthier. So in the world of security, if your go-to is pen testing, you love pen testing, then look at how do I build a pen testing career? What does that look like? And there's lots of people that you can talk to who are good at it. You can look at who's hiring, who's not hiring. You can look at where those needs are being met. Cloud, some people love working in the cloud. They want to some people want to be in management. So looking at what are the best, and then the other thing I guess that is important when you're looking at your plan is it's really difficult if you train in an area, but you don't go back to using those skills.
Yeah.
So it's like being a surgeon, but you haven't done surgery for 5 years. I'm not going to hire you to do my surgery, probably, if I know that. And it's the same thing when you're doing your training. Plan your training according to where you're going to be working or where you're going to transition to in the future.
Yesterday, again, I keep going back to it because it's so fresh in memory. When I was talking to Michael Ball, who you know quite well from Team CISO, we had this discussion around how corporations today, especially in cybersecurity, hiring for skill and firing for fit. And I think when it comes to training, and this is actually not a statement we coined, Dustin Keller from Durham Recruiting brought this up when discussing with us around issues around cybersecurity hiring. I think it's extremely important for corporations to realize that having not necessarily a right, but a strong pathway for progress, a strong pathway for learning and growing is absolutely essential. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's not just something that you just pull out and say, all right, this is your path. There are frameworks to determine how you want to be excelling in your particular field. What kind of frameworks does the SANS Institute subscribe to?
We use NIST as one of our guidelines that we work with, and working with other industries and other corporations, and like we work from everybody from oil and gas, energy, to retail, to health. And so it changes, and COVID certainly has allowed some of those changes as well. Financial industry, and really trying to find their fit to what are the markers that we have to be looking at, and what are the skills that we really need to make sure people have in order to be doing these roles. And so sometimes we have to work within frameworks that organizations have. We might have a framework, but it's like, yeah, but we can't do that. We have to follow this.
Right.
Under privacy law, there's different, and it's becoming more and more aware of what frameworks we can work under, what we can expect people to be doing. And so we individualize um, workforce planning with corporations. And a lot of that has changed because of COVID now as well. So anything we were working on pre-COVID maybe now has changed because we need to get people set up at home and networking. And I have been to some home offices, and it's interesting because their companies fitted them out with like luxury, and I'm like, you don't really need that in a home office, but they didn't know. They just thought this is what we have. We've got to make sure everybody's suited. And I'm like, okay, they don't really need all that, but we can do that if that's what you want. So it's really working with individual corporations and individuals, um, understanding where they want to go, understanding what legislation that they're under, what policies they have to follow, and then where they want to go. And so it varies.
Yeah. They say for your dreams to come true, you got to begin with dreaming first, right? And the importance here is you've pointed out to the fact that SANS has certain very particular paths that you can go down, but then there are also certain, and we'll go into that a little bit more deeper, and I want to sort of bring that with relevance to COVID-19, what certifications you see are now getting highlighted even more, but I want to talk to the areas of exploration in SANS courses, because what I'm getting from you is that the audience for a SANS course is really anybody. It's sector agnostic to a degree. Can you talk to us a little bit about the interdisciplinarity and the multifacetedness of SANS courses?
Yeah, so I guess when you look at everybody's touched by security,
Yep.
whether you're a board of directors, whether you're a nurse at a hospital, whether you're someone running a gas station, we're all touched by security in our world. Some of us are more aware of it than others. So we have more organizations looking at what does our security awareness look like for our workforce. More so now because of COVID, they've started to say, what does our security awareness look like? Do people know A, B, C, D? Do we have our computers set up properly so that they can even work remotely? And some organizations, it took them a long time to get their employees set up to work from home. And that for them became an awareness of, oh, we just never thought this would happen. We didn't plan for this. And now they're planning for it. So really looking at how, again, organizations want to be structured, what they want to fit. When we look at what courses they're taking, we get CISOs taking management courses. We now have CISOs taking introduction to security courses. We have CISOs taking cloud courses now. The reason for that is because those are the conversations that they're a part of, not necessarily needing to be the expert, but they need to have some kind of an understanding on the topic matter to make decisions.
Fantastic. Now, Shelley, we have about 30 minutes left, and I want to start drilling into some practical examples of how someone can get involved with the SANS course or with the SANS program in general. Let's start off with what often is the elephant in the room, and that is the question around cost. Now, I say this all the time, that if you're going to take a training or a certification, or you're going to go to school, university, or college for any program, you're not spending your time there, you're investing your time. And there's a big difference between the two. However, I'd like to know from a cost perspective, in many cases, corporations have budget around PD, but for individuals, are there any programs that they can subscribe to at SANS which maybe gives them some sort of an incentive, anything where they can buy in bulk? How does that process work to reduce the financial burden on individuals who often, and forgive me for making this generalization, often carry a lot of educational debt with them?
Yeah, I guess I always say there's always a way in the door. I believe that. So I have not had a student come to me or someone who said, I want to be involved with SANS, that they haven't been able to be involved. Right. They need to figure out what kind of investment they want to make. I mean, the difference between doing a SANS course is if you go and do a training and it's $7,000 for a 1-week course and your certification, let's say you take the 3 months to get it, you're ready to go and work in the industry now. It's much like the people that go into the trades, I say, they go through the trades and they're working and making money at the same time, and they can grow up and make more money and do different things. And so a SANS course allows you that. So it really is dependent on where an individual's starting from. I've had people who said, I work for the city and I'd like to take 3 SANS courses. Well, SANS has a SLED program. Is your municipality aware of that? Perhaps they qualify, which allows them some different pricing.
Yep.
And if you want to, maybe you can negotiate with your municipality that you want to get in through that program. You're going to pay for it yourself. Maybe the municipality will reimburse you for the certifications later. But you're going to be able to take, 3 SANS classes at a reduced price, because that's a program that we offer. We have academies at SANS where we allow people to apply, veterans, minorities, career transitioners, to do training, women to do training. Apply for some of those programs. As I said, we've got the facilitator program. We have our university, which has programming with different pricing, a different way to follow the curriculum as well that people can look at. So we have a lot of different options where we want to make sure anybody that wants to get in the door can. Sometimes I think it's simple, it's just not easy.
Yep.
And we can make that happen. But like I said at the beginning, a career in security for those people who you see who really excel is all about passion. And if you really want something in life, go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Yeah. And, I've met some of those people who didn't want to let anything stop them, and they've gone on to get, great SANS certificates. They're now on our advisory boards. Yeah. Some of them are writing curriculum. When I look at some of the people that started at SANS when I was there, to John Strand, the 401, Eric, it's like, wow, those guys just took it and ran with it. Yep. And created a community of their own, actually, with SANS. So for individuals looking for SANS training, never let the price stop you.
It's all about the ROI, the return on investment, the return on imagination, and the realization of impact. Now, Shelley, can you talk to us a little bit more about, there are a plethora of certifications and designations that one can pursue through SANS. Can you talk to us a little bit more on how you categorize some of those certifications? Are they very focused on BCP, business continuity planning, and we might be hosting a session on BCP certifications during the cyber exchange, but are they focused on remote access delivery or whatever have you? How are these certifications categorized, and how can one best understand this? I know it's not a simple pill to swallow and suddenly you have begun to understand the cosmos of SANS, but in your opinion and in your purview, how best could you explain it?
I guess the roadmap that I talk about, so if you go to www.sans.org and just search roadmap, you'll see a roadmap that will tell you and take you on a little trip as to where you want to go in your security learnings and certification. So if you're someone that's starting in security, you can start in, core techniques in security and understanding. We have a course that's, we call it more our language, understanding the language of security as well, that many individuals will take across their organization. So everybody has a common understanding and knowledge level in certification. We do, DevSecOps certifications. We have industrial control system certifications. We have management certifications. We have pen testing certifications, cyber defense operations certifications. So there's a plethora of certifications, and the easiest way to do it is to actually look at that roadmap, reach out. I'm happy to sit with someone and say, okay, where do you want to go? Here, and it even goes to explain what all the objectives are once you have this certification, what your knowledge level is going to be. And you might look at that and say, oh, I don't want to do that. I like that. I like the topic, but I don't really want to do that. I don't want to do all that's involved in that topic area. That's fine. It allows you to pick and choose the critical controls. And so just knowing that that's there, that's probably the best resource for individuals who are training, looking at certifications, and keeping your certifications is CPEs. And so again, you need to be active in the community, working It's not unlike any other industry, and I'll go back to nursing. You know, nurses have to renew their certificate, their registration every year, with some working hours and some learnings, and security is very much the same.
We always talk about this aspect of content is king, but then I always return back and say context is queen. Simply because you need to understand that not just because you've read a book once and understood certain theory, that it's relevant as it was yesterday and today. So I think this aspect of CPE credits and realizing that once you go into this world of certifications, there's an element of relevance that you have to keep maintaining. And that's why platforms like the Cyber Exchange community are extremely important. I want to continue down this journey just a little bit more and talk a little bit about the pedagogies of learning. And I'm sure that as a director of client experience, you're witnessing the differences between, in person and remote. But I'm sure now with the pandemic and now that, in BC before Corona, the question around whether you do it remote or in person may have been answered by one or two questions. Today, that landscape has changed. The expectation is, with Zoom fatigue, so on and so forth, the expectation is immersive experiences like the one we're in right now. How is SANS, and before I even go in how is SANS, how are you seeing the world of remote training and learning, specifically in cyber, changing or morphing?
Well, at first, SANS has been doing, on demand and simulcast type training for many, many years now. So for SANS, we were able to pivot quite quickly to live online training. I had the opportunity to attend 4 classes, 4 SANS courses, which is a lot of SANS courses, in the last couple of months, and act as the moderator. So I had firsthand experience on watching the Slack channel, watching the GoTo Training channel, watching the other Slack channel where the people who were running the event were chatting. And what I've seen is a couple of things. Connectivity will always be an issue in our world because we all live in different places, and some of us are more easily connected than others because of our internet services that we have access to. People, I find if I have a question and I'm in class, I come to you and I ask you the question. You and I have the experience of having that conversation. Through live online training, I now have a question. I ask you, the instructor or the teacher's assistant in that class, the TA, and everybody gets to learn from that question. And you and I both know if one person's asking a question, there's at least 12 other people who have the same question who haven't asked the question.
Yep.
And so the learning grows in that manner. And the other aspect that I'm seeing is that people are connecting and staying in touch more because live online allows them to have that access. Hey, why don't you connect with me on LinkedIn? So I see these conversations that I'm like, wow, this is great. Even though they could have done that in a live setting,
For sure.
We know a lot of our audiences, they just don't.
Yep.
They just don't. This has allowed for that to happen. Our labs, have been really cool to watch them, do live online in the Slack channel and the special training lab environments that they have. They're all virtual. And so that has been fun. So that's been great. For some people, we've broken up the classes so they're not doing a class all day from, 9 in the morning until 6 or 7 at night. Some of them say, well, my spouse would kill me or my partner would kill me if I sat in my office all day and left them with the kids all day. Yeah. So we have some courses now that are broken up, so they're only part days or part weeks to allow for people who are working from home and have families at home as well. So we've done some of that adjusting. And we've just really, we have the on-demand portion, the reach out is there. The other thing that I'm enjoying is that I get to go to a whole lot more events now.
Yep. Virtually.
Because I don't have to get on a plane. I don't have to go to hotels. I don't have to change time zones. I just, I can go to like 3 or 4 conferences in a week now because they're all virtual. And so I'm really able to access a lot of key people now and have great conversations on subject matters that we're mutually find important and valuable. So that I think has been a big plus because of this. I mean, if there's people on this today who are thinking of going to the CyberX exchange in August, I'm going to ask them to think bigger. Plan to go to CyberX exchange in August and then make a note of, I'm going to connect with at least 5 people that are also at the cyber exchange and have conversations to pursue and increase my learning and understanding. In today's world, you don't have to just attend anymore. You can now start making a difference to your own training and learnings and to others.
I think a true measure of how we engage online is really reflected in how we treat other people. And I really feel that, and I echo your sentiment, that in platforms and communities like cyberexchange.ca, the key word there is community. It's not just about the bells and whistles of beautiful production, it's also that ability that you've got community now. And all of a sudden, if you look at the community which is growing, you have a CISO having a conversation with a government counselor. And those kind of barriers that have been shattered, I dare to say, but to a degree, Thomas Friedman is right, the world is flat to some degree, and with globalization, you have glocalization happening as well, but that's a separate discussion altogether. I also will add is that I do agree with you, is that now, much like reading a book, because of Corona, you can travel to many places without having to move an inch. That does not exempt the fact that if you can come to the Cyber Exchange studio between August 10th and 14th, Shelley, we would love to have you here. This is a beautiful facility here in the town of Ajax, here at the St. Francis Center. And I want to thank Mayor Sean Collier, who's listening, and a whole bunch of folks from the town of Ajax that have supported to make this happen. And of course, a big ups to Mehdi Raza, who stood this up with his team within a week and a half. We have another 15 odd minutes, and I want to go back to the comment that I made earlier around community and how we're judged by how we treat other people. Earlier, you had mentioned about an initiative that you're running with the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst out in the city of Brampton. The city of Brampton sponsored the last Cyber Exchange, and I believe are in line to sponsor this one as well. You mentioned that you're creating opportunities specifically for women in cybersecurity. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that program is, but more importantly, start to nail a little bit more as to why did you pick that particular initiative? Shelley?
Well, that program came about because there were corporations in the Ontario market that were like, we can't find people with the skills we want them to have. So sometimes we say there's still a lot of people to be hired, but they don't have the skills, the practical skills that we need them to have. And our workplaces need to reflect the people that live in our community. And so the Catalyst program, through the leadership of, and I'm going to give Rashmi a plug here, Rashmi Hajam, was able to sit down with our with several organizations, Rogers, RBC, and the federal government and the city of Brampton came to the table and said, we have dollars, significant dollars, $35 million to be exact overall, and we want to invest it in training people. That then was, we needed to create the program. They wanted to partner with SANS because of the practical side of our training. They wanted individuals to take our Security Essentials course and our 504 course, which was our Hacker Ethical Understanding of Hacking course. And they wanted to provide that to individuals and the certification. They do some communications and some working with management training as well, some soft skills training as well that individuals need also in this industry. And we set forth to put together a program that covers career transitioners, new immigrants, women in security, and we are training over the next 3 to 4 years over 600 individuals. So the individuals need to apply to the program. There's a cyber talent assessment because we want to make sure the people who are taking this training are the right fit for the industry, and they think that we don't all think in that analytical way. That's just not who we all are. And so we do that, and we then do the training with them. So the training happens over a 4-month period. So it's a lot of training. It's a big commitment. The student, if accepted, will pay a $500 fee. So it's not free, but they are getting $20,000 worth of training for $500. We set them up with mentors. We work with them to allow and ensure success. And we're graduating our first cohort in August as well. And my understanding is over 50% of them now have jobs, full-time jobs. So these were people who were not working in the industry. Once they got that first certification, they were taken more seriously by people and hired. We have lots of people reaching out who want to hire them. And of course, for many of the students, it's nervous because all of a sudden you got people that want to hire you. And 4 months ago, you never even knew that you were going to be working in the industry and had the opportunity to be in the industry. So it's a great program. It gives me goosebumps to hear the stories and hear the success. And I'm going to tell you, we have people in those programs who are getting 90% plus on their certifications, and that is just so exciting to know that because of corporate investment,
Yep.
federal, government investment, people believing that we just need to make a path
Agree.
to allow people to be involved. This is the first arrangement that SANS has with any type of organization in North America. So Canada led the way. And kudos to the Catalyst team. Kudos to everyone at SANS and Rogers and RBC and the federal government and the city of Brampton who wanted to ensure that this happened. We're changing lives. We're creating people who are going into the workforce, adding value on security teams. So registration for that is up for our next cohort. So if anybody's interested, just reach out to the Catalyst, the Rogers Catalyst at Ryerson, or go to www.sans.org and ask for me to contact them, and I'm happy to give them the information.
The aspect of having goosebumps over the stories and the narratives that you're hearing, it just reminds me of that line, right? That it's life isn't about finding yourself; it's about creating yourself and creating these opportunities and creating that willingness to learn. And I think that's so well captured in the program that you just described. Now we've got a couple of more minutes, and I want to weave in some of the questions that I've been made aware of, and I'll sort of weave that into our narrative. And if some of them, we need to get back to the audience, and of course, you can always post on the Cyber Exchange wall in case we've missed anything. And if Michael Ball is listening, he still owes us a response to one question around his a book that he would recommend. So we'll get back to that in a bit. But let's go into a couple of questions now. And I'll weave this in a different way. You've heard a lot about this concept around train the trainer, right? And now that you've become proficient in a particular skill, how do I train somebody else to do the same thing? How does SANS empower folks like myself who may come in to get trained to become trainers themselves?
So we have an instructor development team where people can apply to be a SANS instructor. And then there's a process that we go through. And I always say, being a SANS instructor is part how much you know and part how much you can entertain, because it's a lot of information in a very short period of time that you need to be able to excite students about. And that is an incredible skill. I'm sure we've all been in front of instructors where we could have just gone to sleep, read the book later.
Sounds like most of my reviews, but sure.
SANS doesn't allow for that. In fact, at SANS, every instructor is marked on their teaching performance every single day by the students. So imagine going to work every day and having your peers grade you on how well you've done today at work. Right. That for me, that would be like an incredible amount of stress. And they all score high most days. I mean, sometimes there's a bad day because the connectivity went or something happened with the connection, but they tend to do really, really well. So for someone that's interested in being a SANS instructor, for someone who's interested in saying, hey, SANS, we looked at your curriculum, but you don't cover this. Can we write a course on that? We're always looking for people that are interested in that. We've got some big projects going on now with corporations who are looking for specific training, for specific questions to be answered for their workforce to be trained in, and we work with them to create those. So lots of opportunity. If you don't see it there, ask.
Equity. And in this political, socioeconomic climate that we're in, I think matters of equity and equality need to be discussed at all times. One of the questions that I know I've seen repeatedly when people have spoken about training and certifications is how do we address some of our normativity when it comes to language? Most of these trainings, I assume, are delivered in English. How do you address, let's say, other areas where cybersecurity skills are in high demand? So in the Middle East, for example, or in different areas of Africa, does SANS offer training in multiple languages?
No, SANS offers training in English.
Okay.
And it's worked for us all over the world.
Yep.
I think when we look at, when you talk about in the world that we're at in today in language, um, SANS does have a committee set up to look out how are we at SANS doing our best, putting our best foot forward when it comes to equity. We look at the language now in our courseware, in our courses.
Yep.
How is it perceived by everyone who is our audience? Because as you and I know, I mean, just historically, I have dealt with language for a long time in my multiple careers.
Yeah.
And the use of the language is really, really important so that we allow inclusivity of all people. Something we work on every single day in this industry and many others.
Outside of North America, and again, I apologize if it's not necessarily your purview, but what are some of the other communities? And again, I go back to, if you look at our Cyber Exchange Advisory, our champions are from around the world. And what are some of the other communities or countries where you're saying, or where you're seeing cybersecurity is really coming up in terms of a talent base astronomically?
Certainly EMEA, Europe.
Yep.
You see it coming up a lot. We do a lot of work in Europe as well. I don't work in any of those other countries around the world, other than mostly North America. Other than with some of the workforces where there's a continuity of offices in the U.S. or offices in Canada and offices in other area. But there certainly is a growing demand. This is our new world. We're all touched by it. I just did a road trip recently back to Ontario. So I traveled by vehicle from Alberta to Ontario. I didn't realize, I have a brand new vehicle. I didn't realize until I was on the road, of course, in the prairies, it's a long time to go before you turn a corner, that my vehicle drives itself. It's a new vehicle. They're putting all this technology in our vehicles. The only thing is if I keep my hands off the steering wheel too long, it starts beeping at me and says, driver must put hands on steering wheel. But it drove a long time around corners and everything all by itself. Nobody told me that when I drove. It has driver assist, right? And I'm like, our whole world is being changed as an everyday thing. We're seeing it happen now. And so the whole world has to engage in security. From the person that works the front desk, the admissions people at the college, instructors at the college, whether they're teaching in the cybersecurity world or not, it's understanding. And, we have many examples where young people have, outwinked us around security things because we just didn't think it would happen. It's not how we think, typically in a lot of organizations, if it's not security directly related. And so we're starting to see, it just continues to grow. There's not a lack of people who want training. There's not a lack of people who need training. There's not a lack of curiosity and possibility in the industry.
I always maintain that insofar as connectivity remains in our new hierarchy of needs, cybersecurity follows right next to that, not beneath it, not above it, right next to it. We have about 5 minutes left, and I want to dig a little bit deeper into who Shelley is and leave our audience with some more inspiration with the few minutes that we have left. So, they said, what do you want to become when you grow up? I said, I want to be happy. They said I didn't understand the question. I said they didn't understand life. I'm pretty sure you would agree with me when I say that if you're trying to get into a cybersecurity career just because of the price tag that you will have in the market, it's probably not the best way to go. How do you balance the two, Shelley?
I think it's really important that one does what they love and what they're passionate about every single day. We're all born with an expiry date. And I have watched people who've had, great jobs, but they were miserable every Monday morning. I don't ever want to be part of that workforce that, wakes up on Monday, miserable because I have to go to work all week, happy on Friday, so I'll have beer on the decks with my friends on Friday and Saturday. Sunday, about 1 p.m., I'm getting a little grouchy again because it's time to go back to work.
Yeah.
I've always led my life to say, I want to spend my life jumping out of bed in the morning, being excited about what I do and the people I'm about to meet that day, and be passionate and curious about it. I have had multiple careers in my life. I would have never planned my life when I was 16 years old to what it looks like today. Cybersecurity wasn't even a word when I went to school. Um, and when I went to nursing school, dementia was a word, but Alzheimer's was not a word in the medical dictionary. So our lives change so fast, our opportunities change. My advice to people is, if you're passionate about cybersecurity, if you're curious about what does all this mean, how does it all work, why is it important, how can I impact it, start reading, start engaging, start going to conferences. Go to CyberX. SANS has a lot of free, webcasts, literature. Get involved and find your place. You may start in cybersecurity and end up somewhere totally different. It's the journey. And so life, I say, is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Take the adventure.
And as it says behind you, so go out and start creating. I think between control and chaos, there lies creativity, and you really need to grasp that. Shelley, we have 2 minutes more, and I want to run through. If you had a book or a movie to suggest for people to watch to sort of understand your perspective on cybersecurity, your perspective on the client experience, what would that recommendation be?
If I had a book, well, there's a great book that's called Execution, and it's all about your life. It's generic to industry because it allows you to kind of figure out what you want to be doing and then the importance of execution. We've all had things that we want to do in life, but many of us don't act on those things for whatever reason. Maybe our loved ones talk us out of it. Maybe we think we're going to fail, fear, all kinds of things. In my life, it's always been important to understand, what do I want to be doing? What's going to make me happy? Because when I'm happy, everybody around me is happy. Yeah. And how am I going to do that? What do I need to do to execute it? And execution is really important. So when you go back to your cybersecurity career, just knowing that you want a career in cybersecurity isn't going to get you one. You have to execute. You have to attend CyberX Exchange. You have to attend your local ISSA meeting, DEF CON, SANS free events, webcasts. There's a women's conference at the end of the month that SANS is doing. You have to show up. And then when you show up, you have to reach out. You have to touch. You have to ask questions. You have to say, how can I get in that world? What do I need to do to fit in and find your spot in the world? So I think that's a great book that it's about life is waiting for you, make your changes. And it goes to anything in life, whether it be cybersecurity. Like I said, my background has been nursing, social work, policy, elected official, security, business development, bringing large companies to Canada, growing large organizations. When that guidance counselor asked me, Shelley, what do you want to be in life? And I said, a pilot. And she said, well, Shelley, girls can't be pilots. That's when I knew I'd have to find something to do that I loved. And I kept on that journey.
The way you just elocuted that reminded me of how Mehdi Raza, when he told me about the first time that he reached out to you, it was really about this aspect of, let me ask, what's the worst that would happen? And look at how that germinated from a simple ask as to, would you like to speak at the Canadian Women in Cybersecurity Conference, has now germinated into so many different relationships. And your position on the Advisory Exchange Board as one of our champions is greatly appreciated. And for me, having this conversation has got me to realize so many of the blind spots that I have in my own teaching pedagogy that I will take back to the classroom. Now, Shelley, before I thank you, I'm going to address our audience and remind them about some of the lessons that we learned today in a very, very simple fashion. And that is, Do not measure today by the harvest that you reap. Instead, measure it by the seeds that you plant. Think about what's next. That's exactly what I got from Shelley today. Shelley, on behalf of our audience, on behalf of the advisory champions, and more importantly, on behalf of all of our listeners around the world, thank you very much for joining us. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another episode of the Power Hour, and more importantly, besides the Power Hour, there are numerous exchanges happening on the cyberexchange.ca community. Mark your calendars, August 10th to August 14th, cyberexchange.ca, 5 days of interactions on healthcare, business continuity, CISOs, smart communities, and many other topics, many other experts that you can connect with and build your community with. I thank you for your time. I wish you good health, safety, and happiness, and I'll see you tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard for another episode of the Power Hour. Thank you, Shelley, and thank you all very much.
Thank you.